First of all, I want to tell you that when I met Wilson, I actually told Wilson this. Wilson is the Black David Andrews. And when I say like, you have no idea how I don't know if it's true, but it definitely feels true. Like he's your height. He's a black guy. He was raised most of his life in Germany, and like I don't know what he like doesn't do. What does he do? He was like a mechanic and like ran a mechanic shop, just as the guy who handled all the parts, and is just this guy who like he doesn't. He's a lot. I want to probably meaner or more stern than you are, but the attitude and the outlook is very similar.
This guy,
And he doesn't. Say, he says whatever he wants to anybody he fucking wants
it's
at all
starting
times.
to sound like I'm just the White Wilson.
But he like
sounds pretty cool.
he's a pretty badass dude, man. He says whatever the fuck he wants to anyone he wants at any time. Like he can't help it. It's like, and so I met this guy on the trip, and yeah, he was just traveling. He traveled. He'd been traveling since February from Washington D.C. through the snow, rode his bike all the way down to Florida, and then kept going. I think he's still riding on and off now. He did the entire. When he finally stopped, I think a month after I stopped. I stopped at the very beginning of October. I think he stopped at the very end. He traveled that entire time with his small Chihuahua in the back of his bike, just like riding around. And this guy just he at some point he remembered him telling me a story about he was a pimp for a couple months, like was pimping girls out and just like did it. He at some point told me a story of how he realized he didn't want to do that anymore, but like the way he told the story was so matter of factly. Like he's just the most fascinating guy. Like I think you're most alike. Not so much your personalities are alike, but just like the state of being is very similar. But Wilson was a little bit. He was just like I don't know how to describe him, man. He was super interesting. That's all I can say. So anyway, the one thing that Wilson would do would so there was two of us. I met Wilson through another dude named Brent. It was a young guy that I met early on who was also riding. And Brent and Wilson linked up and then we all linked up, right? And then one of the first things was Brent would do stealth camping, so he would be riding and find like some bush on the side of the road and go deep into it and camp so that no police or anything would bother him and like he he's like kind of hippie kid, so he liked being in the fucking woods. Me, I don't like that, and Wilson didn't like it either, right? Because it's like, I don't know, man. The bush is just a weird place. To me, it's too creepy. I don't want to be sleeping out there. I want to be around people, even though if you're around people, then you're like, why are you camping here? Move along. But I'm just like, I want to know that somebody can find me if something happens. So, and Wilson is just like, man, I don't do that shit. I'm going to the bush for no reason. Like, if I'm gonna camp, I'm gonna camp out in the fucking open. So what he would do is he would play this game where he would wait until like 11 at night or 12, and then just try to find the most conspicuous place to camp, like in a playground, like on the lunch table. He would or whatever the table. He would just camp right there and sleep and be up by 6:30, 7 a.m. And by the time somebody comes to tell him you gotta move along, but he's like, well, I already fucking slept, so fuck you, and then he would take off. So that was the game he would play. He would try to find the most conspicuous place to camp and get a good night's sleep and do that. So early on in the trip, uh, I'm like, I'm terrified. I went camping for the first time like a month or 2 weeks before I left New York to go start my trip. I'd never been camping before, never done any of that. So I'm like terrified. I'm just tons of anxiety, mostly around where I'm gonna sleep every night. Just a constant anxiety all the time because I'm not used to camping and it freaks me out. I like being by myself. I'm like, is a fucking cougar gonna eat me? I don't know what's gonna happen, or somebody's just gonna jump out and grab my bike and beat me up. I don't know what's gonna happen, so I'm freaking out all the time. And when I first met Wilson, Brent would camp his way and Wilson would camp this way, and both I was okay as long as people were with me. I could camp however. But I was always like, he's like, man, I just camp wherever I want. I don't care where it is. I'll just set up and go to sleep. I don't care. And I'm just like, how did you do that? What if somebody finds you? But so this was early on, like the first 2 3 months of my trip. By the last 2 months of the trip, like when I was riding from Chicago to New York, or even before that, the last two, especially the last month or so, I just found myself playing the game just because I was bored. Like I didn't care anymore. You know, at first, at the beginning of the trip, my mom would call me at like 5 or 6 and be like, Ralph, you know we're gonna sleep, and I'm like, no, I don't know, freaking out. And then, by the end of the trip, my mom would call me at like 7 or 8, and she's like, Ralph, are you gonna sleep? I'm like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Somewhere will open up, and I would just camp anywhere I wanted, and it would be a great game. Like, where's the light not touching me so that if a car passes by, they won't be able to see me, even though I'm right in front of them. Like, like where is the most? Because it makes it easier for you to get up and pack up and leave if you're not like hidden behind some stuff. You just lie down, sleep, and you can see people, so you're not worried, but they can't see you, depending on how you do it. And it's just, so I don't know. And it was never like a conscious decision, like, oh, I'm gonna play this game now. I just found myself doing it at a certain point because I'd had to do it so many times. And after 8 months, I didn't care anymore. Uh, so yeah, that's it. That's the whole story, really.
Did he have any? Did he have any personal experiences where that would
Went
have
wrong?
consequences, or you know, like
I think
you're found as unwanted sleeping in that?
I didn't.
situation?
I didn't. No, I did. There was one night I was in some town, I think in Maryland. I think it was Maryland. Anyway, it was this town that was man, what was up with this town? I think it was like right outside of Cleveland. It was like one town out of Cleveland, Ohio. And yeah, I was there, and I was riding around this town trying to find some place to camp out, and I couldn't find any place for some reason. I couldn't find anything. I think it was because it was so tightly packed. I don't remember what town this was. So anyway, I finally get to this area, and there's these like railroad tracks, and it's the only place I find that's like kind of deserted where I can really set up camp. It was a really kind of urban place, and I'm riding around, and I finally see this like uh what do they call those places? Where the old men, like the war veterans hang out, the lodges, like
Like
the Elks Lodge.
like a Legion.
Yes, yeah, American Legion kind of place. And they had these like enclosed things where they could have like a patio where they could have their picnics or whatever. And it was like fenced in and locked. So I get there and I'm like, oh shit! Like the only bad part was there was trains, loud ass trains chugging by me the whole night. But I could just climb to that fence and it was perfect. Like I could just chain my bike up outside and be inside and nobody would realize I was in there. Like nobody would be able to see me unless they looked. And it's the middle of the night, so I wasn't worried about it. So when I finally did get up the nerve and feel like getting up, because I was hanging out at McDonald's or something, I finally did feel like getting up and going to look for a place. 'Cause I thought I was going to stay up all night, but I realized that was a bad idea. By the time I did finally go find that place, it was probably like 1 or 2 in the morning. It was about 2 in the morning. I finally found a place, camped, set myself up, just put my sleeping bag out, my sleeping mat, my sleeping bag, and then went in and went to sleep. That was probably around 3 a.m. By around 5:30, 6 a.m., this guy was like, hey, you can't sleep here. You can't sleep here. There's going to be a bunch of people coming in like half an hour. I was like, in like 20 minutes or something. I don't know. It was like they were on their way, and I was like, shit. I only had like 3 hours of sleep. But I was like, all right, fuck it. And he was nice. He like came and brought me a thing of coffee, and he was like, all right, man, you gotta hurry up and get out of here. And then of course, like all these old American Legion, all these old vet guys show up, these old white guys, and they're like, we're just packing up, and they're, hey George, I think that was the only that was the only time I ever got kicked out of a place. Wilson also, like, I think people would maybe, like, police would maybe talk to him, but he'd be like, I'm leaving, when they would come up. He's like, I've already slept, nothing you can do now. But otherwise, no, I didn't really run into anything, and I never heard Wilson really say anything. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.